started pulling the air cleaner and stuff off, and couldn't help but notice how clean everything is on this car and how everything is all still here. Even the heat riser and stuff is still here. I gotta change the air filter and clean that cover and stuff off, but man, this is super clean. I'm actually got it hooked up to the AC machine because it looks like somebody's already converted it to R134. So I want to see if there's any leaks in the system. According to this, it's like 40 ounces of refrigerant. Oh my god. Power steering fluid was a little low, so I decided to top the power steering fluid off. I'm gonna run it and see, kind of get a feel for what's going on. I'm gonna check for vacuum leaks because it does start a little, it's got a little bit of a hard start. So I'm gonna check vacuum leaks at first, because you do gotta kind of tap it a little bit. I do notice the back of the intake manifold here is a little wet, so I'm thinking that maybe refresh up top, do the valve cover gaskets again, pull the manifold and stuff out, reseal everything. Overall, I mean, this thing's in really nice shape. The ground strap going back to the bell housing is good. What is this here? Oh, wait a second. Here we go. That's a problem. It was tucked up on the wrong side and bent, so that, what is that vacuum for? Is that like, would that be like for, I'm learning as I'm doing this too, guys. So like, I got my professional mechanical knowledge, but not a ton on the older stuff. Like, some of it will apply and some of it won't. And I'm wondering maybe if that's the vacuum for the cruise control. Possibly. I'm gonna go get a vacuum tee and actually fix this without the tape, obviously. And I did notice further back there is a hole in it, so there would have been some kind of vacuum leak. Yeah. So I have found the appropriate size vacuum tubing for right now. It's pretty robust tubing, and it's the same size diameter as that, so that's gonna have to suffice right now. At least it'll get rid of the vacuum leak, if there's even vacuum without demand. Let's see if I can. The connection looks a little rough. Probably should brush that out a little. I'm gonna clean some of these connections out and put them all back together. Good thing is this thing has stayed in a perfect vacuum for what, 7 minutes and 45 seconds now, so we'll see. Fired up way quicker this time. There must have been some kind of vacuum leak right there. That might have had something to do with it, because replacing that, as soon as the first hit, there's no hesitation, no nothing at all. It just fires right up now. There's no tapping the gas to keep it running or anything. Literally just fires right up now since I fixed that vacuum line over there on the other side. I don't know if it's just me. I'm not sure if vacuum is going to that all the time. I guess I could. Oh yeah. Yeah, it definitely has vacuum on it. fresh oil down there. That's what I want to see. I want to see where that's coming from. So I went ahead and got the right filter for it, which is an FL1A. Some of you old school guys remember this. Big old filter for these things. There's so much debris in this thing. So you can see I'm working with the brake flush machine here, because when I pulled the lid off the master cylinder, this stuff is nasty. It's nothing but sludge and stuff down inside here, and it's actually plugging up the ports that go down to the actual valve that slides back and forth between the primary and secondary. And it's just it's rough. There's all kinds of debris and junk inside here, so I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up, and then you can see the after effect once it's cleaned, because there's no point in sitting and watching me suck sludge out of the bottom of a reservoir. So you can see here, I pretty much got it as clean as I can possibly get it without taking a brush and like brushing, you know, the surface rust and stuff. But I got all the sludge out of the corners. I really sucked the inlet to the valve slots out completely. I used some WD-40 to actually blow through and blow all the junk out of there. And then I actually took some shop air and blew out all of the chemical that I had. I've had the AC in a vacuum now for about 25 minutes with no loss of vacuum. It stayed right at about 28 to 30 inches of vacuum. And actually what I end up doing is end up charging this thing, I think 42 ounces is what I ended up charging it. The AC works like it's brand new. No leaks, no nothing at all. Drips just like it's supposed to, and it's ice cold. And this is just fresh fluid going back in there instead of the murky, sludgy stuff that was in there before. And I have my helper right after this end up just lightly pushing the pedal as I break down everything and bleed it. So I just fill the back about 3/4 of the way, and then the front about 3/4 of the way, and then I have him get in, and then I crack all the lines loose. There was a ton of air, but now we could actually get some fluid to the brake lines to actually stop appropriately. And that was the problem the whole time, was after I got all this cleaned out and fresh fluid put in and the valve moving back and forth with fresh fluid, all of a sudden the brakes just kind of came back. I'm gonna go wipe all the kind of sludgy stuff that was built up inside that container off this rubber seal. Everything's wiped off. I'm gonna go install it now and just snap it on, pull the cover over, and then crack each one of the lines appropriately. The front line ended up being a 13 millimeter. It fit the best. The back line, even though it wasn't all rusted out or anything, it wasn't a 15 and it wasn't a 16. It was actually a 5/8. The 5/8 fit that line the best. So I used the 5/8 to crack the back line loose. Kind of weird how one was a 13. It fit really good. Half inch didn't quite fit it as good. But the back line was a 5/8 and a 15. Now here I am right there. There's like a bunch of spurty air coming out, but there's music playing in the background, and this is a monetized video, so I chose to do a voiceover, have him lightly push on the brake again, and I just keep doing this over and over again. There was 2 or 3 times here I just kept getting air out of that. Then finally the air stopped. I ended up moving to the back and draining the back, or bleeding the back out as well. So I'm just asking him. It's kind of hard figuring him out because he's a new guy. And normally when I say, okay, I've got it tight, or I'll say, all right, tight, the other guy will say, okay, pressing, all right, I'm down. But this guy's young. I'm not sure if he's ever bled brakes with somebody before, so I kept looking at him like, are you going to actually tell me that you're pressing on the brake or not? And he finally got it and started giving me a thumbs up. Now here I am on the back. Back really didn't have a lot of air come out of it. There was a little bit right there at first, but then it was straight fluid after that. So there's actually a couple boxes cut down on the frame down there where fluid actually drains straight down. So that's what I'm doing here is I did this a couple times, getting fresh fluid out of there and just draining straight down. Eventually, after all this is said and done, I actually take a bunch of shop towels and stuff like that and lay all over the floor and catch all this stuff. And then I took the power washer and cleaned all this off inside the engine bay. These videos can only be so long because you won't retain people long enough. I don't know, maybe on stuff like this, people will want to see. Here we are, 42 ounces charge of the AC. I'm going to go start the car up. And whenever the AC compressor kicks on, it almost sounds like this thing's got a cam. It's like it's really loading up the alternator. And then when you turn the lights on and roll the window up and down along with it, it really stresses the alternator quite a bit. So I'm thinking this thing probably is going to end up needing a bigger alternator. But this is a FL1A filter that I actually ended up picking up for this car. It's got a newer orange can frame on it, and before you guys start to freak out or whatever, it was just put on, so I'm actually going to use it until all the cleaning and everything's done, and I decide what oil I want to use for it. I ended up getting some Platinum, some 5W30 Platinum, Pennzoil Platinum Ultra. It's going to be here in the next week or two, so that's what I'm going to end up putting in this. Vehicle fired right up, put the AC on, the compressor came on immediately, and it was like ice cold within seconds. So I was excited about that. Let me see if I can stop this right now, the voiceover, and then you can hear the car running. So basically I'm under the car right now and I see the oil all over the place and I'm checking for trans fluid. It's not trans fluid. Looks like oil's coming from the front cover area somewhere, or doesn't look like it's the valve cover, but I can't identify anything. So I point out some areas that I'm interested in, checking around that front cover area. And then I can't pinpoint where exactly it's coming from. Looks like, again, front cover area at the top. The bottom of the power steering pump a little bit, it's leaking right at the lines, so that's going to be an easy fix. That's not a hard fix. I'm not worried about that. I ended up topping off the power steering fluid, and everything was perfectly fine there. And then I'm looking here, and I'm like, wait a second, this looks like a newer transmission. It's a Jasper transmission with an actual date code, production date. I can actually get a hold of Jasper and see how old the transmission is. And I thought at first that's trans fluid, but it's not. It's fresh oil. And I start wiping everything off, and I'm like, you know what, the hell with it. I just need to start spraying down this whole entire bottom of this vehicle. So eventually that's what I end up doing. I spray as much as I can down in the stall, get it real nice and high up so I can try to identify where the leak's coming from. And then eventually I take it down to the power washer at the end of the shop when everything's said and done. And I chop the exhaust off, actually. getting ready for something new, not this restrictive crap that's on it. Get rid of the smog pump and maybe put an idler pulley. So if any of you know the part number for the bypass pulley that they actually put in place of the smog pump, I'd love for you to share that with me, because I'd be interested in getting rid of it. Later in this video, I actually do end up chopping off the exhaust right behind the manifolds, just because it's in the way, it's restrictive. You know what, I don't mind the stock car sound compared to the leaking catalytic converters that were on this, because both of them had blown out holes in the center and the back, so I just chopped them off, everything. You'll hear here in a little bit, it almost sounds like it's got a little bit of a cam. Every time the compressor kicked in, it starts to blip, 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 blip. So maybe I just leave the compressor on all the time and make it seem like it's cammed. Anyway, so we're to the point now where I'm fixing to make the decision to just start spraying stuff down, and then I come back and show you guys after everything's sprayed down exactly what it looks like. But no rot anywhere. I mean, there's the cover that goes around that fuel filter right there. It's the most rotten part of underneath the vehicle. The torque boxes are good. Where everything mounts in, there's nothing flaking. There's one little spot right there at the seam where it's actually starting to layer a little bit, so if I get ahead of it, I can stop that from happening. Up inside the box itself, it's just all little surface stuff in there. And you know, going back towards the fuel tank, that brake line right there looks a little iffy. Still got a lot of material left, so I'll probably end up actually fixing that. I'm gonna end up putting a new connection and stuff right there, go to the rear brakes, but it's still a lot of material right there. So that'll probably be one of my next projects, is actually replacing that line. And then the bushings look real good. They're not all rotten and rolling out. Shocks are wore out. They're old. They need to be replaced for sure. It's got new brake cylinders, or it's got new brake cylinders in there for the drum brakes. I pushed that back away from the actual vent because it's rubbing against it, and I could see possibly a spot in the future. Spin that around, make sure there's no debris and stuff in it, and the rear end can vent properly. Now I move over to this other side here, and I'm checking the brake lines. Looks like somebody's already been in here, replaced brake lines. The bushing's got a little spot where it's starting to crack, but some 80, or was that AT205 or something, spray in there to try to rejuvenate that seal a little bit. And this is after I came through here and started spraying everything down. And I end up going to get a flashlight so I can show you guys exactly what that number is, in case somebody works for Jasper or knows how to look at that number and get some kind of production date off of it. The number, I think I end up getting close here, I'm not sure, but I may have to go back and look. So we're going to roll on here after I look underneath this thing a little bit more. I'm pretty impressed with what I got overall, to be honest with you, because there's nothing that's super hard to fix on this car. I mean, I've heard guys say some stuff was a pain in the butt. This engine looks like it's really, really easy to work on, especially compared to this new stuff I'm tearing apart. There's the cat, the smog line, and the tailpipe. Chop that sucker off and be done with it. I was tired of seeing it. Both cats are blown out right in the center. It's hissing coming out of it, so I was like, nope. There is your beautiful view dumped.
Check it out, guys. We got a man here, about to wrap this.
Oh, yeah, she's running beautiful now. Brakes are great. It was just master cylinder was plugged up a little bit. It had all kinds of junk. You guys see me clean out that master cylinder. It was blocking them ports going to that proportioning valve. It starts up immediately. Factory AC works. I eventually did end up seeing fresh oil coming right off the back of the intake manifold. It's just slowly coming down the back of the intake manifold. Got the tires all aired up. Check the suspension out. Everything's tight. Nothing's loose. The brakes working real good now. And the car's just, it's actually running great. There's some idle issues whenever you put a big load on it. Like if you have the lights on and the AC on and then you try to use a window, it's almost like that alternator just can't put out enough. Like it's just old, it's weathered, it needs to be changed. Here's the kicker to all this. My coworker says, you know, I have a 2000 Explorer, computer and everything, harness, transmission, everything for that car. It will literally bolt right into that car. And I'll take like $700 for it. The frame and everything's rotted out on it, but the drivetrain and everything is like perfect. Fires right up immediately, shifts no problem. No misfire, no nothing. That would be a hell of a motor to put inside there with everything running right. 2000 model Explorer. What was it, 2000? What year did they stop? The last year that they made the Explorer with a 5-liter. He's got one. He said, I'll sell the whole thing to you for $700. You pull the motor and transmission, the harness and everything out of it, it's yours. You can have it. Wow. Things are starting to get a little sweet. What do? Do we leave it the way that it is, saying that every single factory component on this car works and nothing's really rotted out? It's just all cosmetic stuff that needs to be fixed? Or do we have some fun and let it rip? You let me know what you'd like to see.